Alright, Naruto fans, time to have a serious talk because every time Sarada uses her Mangekyo, half the fandom acts like someone unplugged their Wi-Fi during a ranked match. The denial kicks in immediately. Oh, that ability's not that broken, it's not that strong. Yeah, about that. Sarada's Mangekyo ability, Ohirume, may quietly be one of the most absurdly dangerous techniques introduced in Boruto's manga. And the craziest part is that some people are still treating it like it's a cute little support ability instead of a tactical nightmare that it actually is. This is a jutsu that can manipulate the battlefield, neutralize overwhelming threats, and potentially shut down enemies who would realistically be out of Sarada's league. In other words, the girl who inherited the Sharingan Kekkei Genkai just unlocked a Mangekyo ability that makes some of the other Mangekyo jutsu we know look like Windows 98 trying to run Elden Ring. And yet, somehow, the fandom, some parts of it, still say, yeah, that seems mid. Join me in today's newest edition of the Ninjutsu Handbook over here on Naruto Explained, where your OBC, your original Boruto chief, is going to break down exactly how Ohirume works, the mechanics behind the ability, the subtle details I think some fans are overlooking, and why, once you truly understand it, this technique should be viewed as one of the most broken jutsu that we have in the Naruto franchise. Because if this ability truly reaches its peak, then Sarada isn't just catching up to the top tiers. She's about to start rewriting the rules of how we define top tiers. And honestly, that should terrify a lot more people than it currently does. Alright, so now that the fandom's probably finished arguing down in the comment section about whether or not Sarada's Mangekyo ability is secretly mid, which by the way, the same fandom has a tendency to even downplay stuff like Kamui, let's break down how Ohirume works. There's a reason why, the painfully obvious reason why Kashin Koji considers Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan a key factor in winning the war against Jura. That reason starts with the core ability itself. Ohirume allows Sarada to generate up to 4 black spears, each of them with a diameter ranging from anywhere from 5 centimeters to 250 centimeters. Now, on the surface, that might not seem particularly impressive. 4 floating balls. Wow, terrifying. Except those spears possess something that immediately changes the entire equation: artificial gravity. Each spear generates a gravitational pull that is disproportionate to its mass, meaning the gravitational force of these spears, it produces something far greater than what physics would normally allow for an object of that size. In other words, Sarada isn't just throwing around chakra constructs. She's essentially creating localized gravity wells on the battlefield. And unlike something like Pain's Shinra Tensei or Bansho Tenin, which are powerful but relatively straightforward applications of repulsion and attraction, Sarada's ability allows her to freely control the gravitational force of each spear at will. That means she can increase or decrease the pull, she can redirect targets, and even use the spears to pin enemies in place. Think about how dangerous that is in a fight. A ninja ultimately relies on what? Mobility and deception, hand signs, dodging, closing distance, creating space, using trickery. But if Sarada locks onto you with her gaze and suddenly the gravity around you increases or decreases, that's your body getting crushed, that's your body getting dragged towards the spear, whether you like it or not. And once you're pulled in, Sarada can increase the gravitational pressure enough to crush you against it, which is already horrifying, but that's not the only thing that she can do with those spears. She can also detonate them. So imagine the worst possible scenario for a person fighting her. You're suddenly dragged into a gravity well you can't escape. Doesn't matter if you're stronger than her based on what we've seen. Your body is pinned in place by those gravitational forces, and then the spear itself explodes. That's not a jutsu, that is a physics problem. And the shinobi on the receiving end is a lab experiment. Now, there's another key detail about how this ability functions that makes it even more terrifying. The range of the technique is directly tied to Sarada's field of vision, meaning if Sarada sees you, you are inside the battlefield Ohirume, and once she has you locked, she can turn her head and look at something else and lift that as well. This is extremely important because Mangekyo Sharingan abilities are usually limited by range or by positioning. Like Kamui requires targeting depending on which variation of Kamui you use. Amaterasu requires visual focus. Tsukiyomi requires eye contact. But Sarada, with Ohirume, it turns Sarada's entire line of sight into a gravity manipulation zone. She doesn't have to make eye contact with you, she just needs to see you, which means this ability becomes even more dangerous the better that Sarada's battlefield awareness becomes. And that's where the targeting mechanic comes into play. Once Sarada is able to directly focus her gaze on somebody, they are affected by the gravitational pull. That limitation might sound like a weakness, but in reality, it's what makes the ability so surgically precise. Sarada can selectively decide who or what gets affected by the gravity. Weapons, projectile, bodies, even incoming jutsu. If she locks onto it with her Mangekyo, she can potentially drag it straight into one of those spears, meaning something like a massive ninjutsu attack can be pulled off course and redirected. That alone has enormous tactical implications. But there's another layer of this ability that makes it even more interesting. If Sarada targets a living being with gravitational pull, she also becomes affected by the gravity itself, which is actually a really clever piece of design in terms of storytelling writing, because gravity does not discriminate. If you create a gravitational well strong enough to drag someone towards it, you're getting pulled as well. But Sarada can get around this limitation by doing something pretty genius. She can balance the gravitational forces that apply to her body between those spears that you see. Those spears are not just for decoration. By adjusting how each spear pulls on her body, Sarada can counteract the gravity that is affecting her, allowing her to levitate and fly. And by moving in synchronization with the spears themselves, she can even fly at extremely fast speeds, reaching what is a confirmed Otsutsuki level of flight speed. Now, this is where things do get insane from a physics perspective, because what Sarada is essentially doing is using gravitational vectors as a propulsion system. Now, obviously, in order to reach those high levels of speed, Sarada would have to exert more of her chakra to do so, but that is something that, again, we know that she can do, and the science behind why makes a ton of sense. Sarada, by creating those gravity wells and then manipulating how the forces interact with her own body to accelerate through space, that is absolutely ridiculous, but it's exactly the kind of absurdly broken ability that Mangekyo Sharingan techniques should evolve into when you think about it. But there's a catch. Again, this power is incredibly taxing. The technique consumes a massive amount of chakra, and like all Mangekyo abilities, it does cause the vision to deteriorate over time. And we already know how that story is going to end. The more that Sarada uses that power, the closer she gets towards going blind. And as we see with a character like Sasuke, it does not take long for Sasuke to start experiencing vision problems. We saw that as early as Naruto volume 45, where he couldn't even see the glass in front of him properly. It does not take much for the Mangekyo to start having vision issues. Amplifying the gravitational force of the spears, it will also place a greater strain on the body. So when Sarada pushes that ability even further, the eye she's using is going to bleed. And the first time she used Ohirume, the exertion was so intense that she collapsed unconscious afterwards from the amount of chakra exerted. And it makes a ton of sense when you consider what she's actually doing. Manipulating gravity on this scale is an insane amount of chakra being exerted. Even in real world physics, generating artificial gravity would require astronomical levels of power. We're talking about forces strong enough that could bend time and space. Not Sarada, but just gravity itself. And Sarada being able to manipulate gravity is a big deal. So the idea that the technique drains enormous chakra and damages her eyesight very quickly, it feels very grounded within the rules of the series. It's powerful, but it comes at a cost. And if Sarada pushes too far too often, she's going to be looking for Sasuke's old sunglasses, and she's going to be looking for a seeing eye dog. Now, here's where things get even more interesting from a narrative perspective. According to Kashin Koji, Sarada's Mangekyo power is one of the major tools that's going to be needed to take down Jura. That's a pretty massive statement, because Jura isn't just another another villain. He's the guy who kills Boruto on multiple timelines. He's a being operating on a completely different scale of power. So for Koji to say that Sarada's Mangekyo is essential towards winning that war suggests that Ohirume's true potential goes far beyond what we've seen so far. And that brings us to another huge unknown, Sarada's second Mangekyo Sharingan ability. So historically, Mangekyo Sharingan powers tend to work in pairs, outside of Itachi at least. Sasuke had Amaterasu in one eye, but he had Kagutsuchi in the other eye, the ability to control the flames. Obito had short and long range Kamui. On its own, Amaterasu was devastating but limited, but once Sasuke could shape and manipulate the flames, the technique became exponentially more dangerous. Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan may follow a similar pattern based on history, and that's where the name Ohirume becomes interesting, because Ohirume is another name for Amaterasu, the Shinto sun goddess. In Naruto, Amaterasu was synonymous with the Black Flames, but Sarada's ability takes the symbolism in a completely different direction. Instead of flames, her Mangekyo Sharingan creates gravitational spears. That's a creative twist on Uchiha tradition. Rather than just having the same Amaterasu abilities that Sasuke and Itachi use, Sarada's Mangekyo expresses the concept in a completely new way. And if her second eye ends up enhancing or controlling those gravitational spears even further, then Ohirume may evolve into something even more terrifying, because the moment Sarada can fully master and combine both Mangekyo powers, assuming they're related, the battlefield isn't going to be just dangerous for our enemies. It's going to become a place where gravity itself answers to Sarada, and that's the type of power that should scare you. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Click here on the left to check out more videos from the Ninjutsu Handbook, or click here on the right to check out this video on the Uchiha clan.